By 1985, horror had exploded in every direction. The big franchises were thriving, but the real treasures were happening just off to the side, on television, in international markets, and in the low-budget corners of the genre, where anything could happen. This was the year where occult forces haunted New York apartments. Halloween Night came alive on network TV, and Hong Kong redefined the vampire film with martial arts and folklore. Rock bands met brutal fates in snowy wastelands, fashion models walked into Giallo nightmares, and even Vietnam vets faced down a cult from hell. Tonight we're exploring 1985 through 10 overlooked horror films that prove the decade's midpoint was just as bold, bloody, and unpredictable as horror fans could want. Blood Tracks, 1985. A rock band and their entourage head into the snowy wilderness to film a flashy new music video, expecting nothing more dangerous than the cold. But when they set up camp in an abandoned factory, they cross paths with a deranged inbred family hiding in the mountains. What begins as a music shoot quickly spirals into a fight for survival, as the family hunts the outsiders in a frenzy of blood and violence. Directed by Mats Helge Olsen, Blood Tracks is a Swedish-American production that captures the wild excess of 80s horror and glam rock culture. The band Easy Action plays themselves, delivering both the soundtrack and on-screen performances, while the cast of models and actors round out the doomed entourage. The snowy landscapes and abandoned industrial setting give the film a stark, isolated feel, making the violence stand out against the white backdrops. When the carnage begins, it's brutal and relentless. Axes, traps, and blunt force, leaving trails of blood in the snow. What makes Blood Tracks memorable is its mix of music and mayhem. It takes the glam rock energy of the mid-80s and throws it headlong into slasher territory, resulting in a bizarre hybrid of concert film and survival horror. Long forgotten outside of VHS collectors' circles, Blood Tracks has developed cult status thanks to its outlandish premise, glam metal soundtrack, and over-the-top brutality. It's a perfect example of how the 80s horror scene wasn't afraid to mash genres together and go for broke. The Oracle, 1985. After moving into a new apartment, a young woman named Jenny stumbles upon a mysterious device, an occult spirit board known as the Oracle. At first, it seems like harmless curiosity, but when Jenny begins communicating with the spirit of a murdered man, she finds herself pulled into a web of supernatural vengeance. Soon, dark forces lash out, and anyone connected to the Oracle faces grisly retribution. Directed by Roberta Findlay, The Oracle blends supernatural horror with the grimy, low-budget charm of New York exploitation cinema. Caroline Capers Powers stars as Jenny, anchoring the film as she's drawn deeper into the Oracle's curse, while Roger Neal and Pam Latesta round out the cast of doomed acquaintances. The film's strongest moments come from its eerie atmosphere, flickering candles, shadowy apartments, and supernatural manifestations that strike without warning. The violence is graphic and often shocking, with practical gore effects that punctuate the occult mystery with bursts of nastiness. What sets The Oracle apart is its mix of occult paranoia and urban grit. It feels both pulpy and atmospheric, capturing the rough edges of independent New York horror, while delivering supernatural thrills. While overlooked on release, it became a curiosity on VHS, thanks to its striking cover art and reputation for wild twists. Today, it endures as one of Findlay's most memorable horror films, a low-budget occult shocker that combines sleaze, scares, and supernatural flair. Cemetery of Terror, 1985. On Halloween night, a group of medical students decide to break into an abandoned mansion and steal a corpse for a prank. Their idea of fun takes a gruesome turn when they unwittingly resurrect the body of a notorious serial killer. Soon the night spirals into chaos, as the killer rises from the grave and unleashes terror on anyone in his path, while an entire cemetery begins to stir with the dead. Directed by Ruben Galindo Jr., Cemetery of Terror is one of the standout Mexican horror films of the 1980s. Hugo Stiglitz stars as Dr. Carden, a psychiatrist who knows the truth about the killer and races to stop the carnage. The young cast of pranksters, along with a group of trick-or-treating kids caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, round out the doomed ensemble. The film leans heavily on atmosphere, with misty graveyards, shadowy mausoleums, and plenty of undead rising from the earth. The violence is grisly and relentless, blending slasher-style kills with zombie mayhem, while the Halloween setting ties it all together with an eerie seasonal backdrop. What makes Cemetery of Terror especially memorable is its ambition. It combines elements of slashers, zombie flicks, and supernatural horror into one chaotic package, delivering non-stop action once the dead begin to rise. Originally overlooked outside of Mexico, it gained a cult following on VHS, where horror fans discovered its mix of energy, gore, and Halloween spirit. Today it stands as a hidden gem of international horror that captures the wild, anything-goes spirit of mid-80s fright films. The New Kids, 1985. When Abby and Loren, two teenage siblings, are sent to live with their uncle after a family tragedy, they hope for a quiet, fresh start in a small Florida town. Instead, they find themselves the target of Eddie Dutra, a violent local delinquent, and his gang. What begins as bullying quickly escalates into a campaign of terror, pushing the siblings into a deadly fight for survival. Directed by Sean S. Cunningham, best known for launching Friday the 13th, The New Kids takes the revenge thriller formula and gives it a distinctly 80s edge. Shannon Presby and Lori Loughlin star as the siblings, while James Spader steals the show as Eddie, delivering one of his earliest and most unhinged performances. The film builds tension steadily, starting with teenage confrontations and spiraling into full-blown violence. By the finale, the gang's reign of terror reaches a shocking climax inside an abandoned amusement park, turning the setting into a nightmarish battleground. What makes The New Kids memorable is its cast and intensity. Spader's Eddie is both charismatic and terrifying, a performance that elevates the film from routine thriller into something far more unsettling. Cunningham's direction gives the violence a raw, grounded edge, blurring the line between teen drama and horror. Though overshadowed by the slashers of its era, The New Kids found its audience on home video, where Spader's villainous turn became a highlight for fans of cult cinema. Today it's remembered as a tense and disturbing slice of 80s survival horror. Nothing Underneath, 1985. A young forest ranger in Wyoming receives a terrifying psychic vision of his twin sister, a fashion model in Milan, being murdered. Racing overseas to find her, he's thrust into the glamorous but cutthroat world of high fashion, where beauty and danger walk hand in hand. As models begin turning up dead, he must navigate a web of secrets, lies, and killers, hiding behind the glittering lights of the runway. Directed by Carlo Vanzina, Nothing Underneath is an Italian giallo updated for the 1980s, trading shadowy alleys for glossy catwalks. Tom Shanley stars as the determined brother, while Renee Simonson and Donald Pleasance add international flair to the cast. Pleasance in particular brings eccentric gravitas as the inspector trying to unravel the mystery. The film is drenched in 80s style, neon lights, pulsating synths, and runway sequences that double as backdrops for murder. The killings are staged with suspenseful flair, blending classic giallo stylization with the era's obsession with fashion and image. What makes Nothing Underneath stand out is its mix of sleaze and sophistication. It carries the DNA of earlier gialli, but packages it for a new generation, fusing mystery, glamour, and slasher-style shocks. Long overlooked outside of Italy, the film became a cult favorite on VHS for fans drawn to its stylish blend of fashion world intrigue and violent set pieces. Today it's remembered as a late-era giallo that captures both the elegance and the excess of 1980s horror. Mr. Vampire, 1985. When a wealthy man's corpse is exhumed for reburial, a Taoist priest discovers it has transformed into a Jiangshi, a hopping vampire from Chinese folklore. With the undead on the loose, the priest and his bumbling disciples must battle supernatural forces using spells, martial arts, and a mix of tradition and comedy. Directed by Ricky Lau and produced by Sammo Hung, Mr. Vampire became a landmark in Hong Kong cinema. Lam Xingying shines as the stern yet resourceful priest, balancing stoic authority with bursts of action. Supporting roles from Ricky Hui and Chin Siu Ho provide comic relief and martial arts flair, rounding out the ensemble. The film is packed with energy, wire-fu stunts, slapstick humor, eerie makeup effects, and cultural rituals that blend action, horror, and comedy seamlessly. The hopping vampires themselves, stiff yet menacing, became iconic, defining the Jiangxi subgenre for years to come. What makes Mr. Vampire so special is its balance. It delivers genuine scares alongside fast-paced kung fu and broad comedy, creating a mix that felt fresh both in Hong Kong and abroad. The unique cultural spin, combined with relentless entertainment, made it a phenomenon. Mr. Vampire not only spawned multiple sequels and imitators, but it also introduced international audiences to a whole new side of horror. It remains a beloved classic and lively, inventive, and endlessly fun. The Bride, 1985. In a lavish Gothic castle, a scientist breathes life into the dead once more, this time creating not just a monster, but a companion. Dr. Frankenstein, played by Sting, fashions a beautiful woman from spare parts, brought to life as Eva, portrayed by Jennifer Beals in one of her first major roles after Flashdance. But as Eva learns what it means to live, think, and desire freedom, she begins to see herself not as a creation, but as a woman unwilling to be controlled. Directed by Frank Rodham, The Bride reimagines Mary Shelley's classic tale with romantic drama layered into its horror roots. Beals brings vulnerability and strength to Eva, while Sting gives Dr. Frankenstein a cold, arrogant edge. Meanwhile, Clancy Brown delivers a standout performance as Victor, the creature cast aside by his creator, whose tragic journey runs parallel to Eva's awakening. The production is lush and atmospheric, filled with Gothic sets, candlelit halls, and storm-lashed laboratories. Beneath the spectacle lies a story about humanity, the need for companionship, the cruelty of rejection, and the dangers of playing God with life itself. Unlike many horror films of the 1980s, The Bride leans more toward Gothic romance and character drama than outright scares, creating a slower, more brooding experience. It's less about shocks and more about mood, with its atmosphere and performances carrying the weight of the story. While it wasn't a hit in its day, The Bride has endured as a unique interpretation of the Frankenstein mythos. Its combination of Gothic romance and tragedy offers a more emotional angle than many horror adaptations, and its performances, especially Beals and Brown, give it a lasting resonance. Thou Shalt Not Kill, Except, 1985. A group of Vietnam veterans reunites at a remote cabin, hoping for peace after the trauma of war. But their quiet retreat shatters when a bloodthirsty cult, led by a maniacal Charles Manson-like figure, descends upon the countryside, leaving death and destruction in their path. When the cult kidnaps one of the vets' loved ones, the men take up arms once again, turning the night into a brutal showdown. Directed by Josh Becker, Thou Shalt Not Kill Except blends exploitation grit with grindhouse-style action. The cast is largely made up of Bruce Campbell's Michigan filmmaking circle. Sam Raimi himself hams it up as the unhinged cult leader, while Brian Schultz, John Manfredi, and Timothy Quill round out the squad of hardened vets. The film thrives on its raw energy. The cult's depravity is played with shocking intensity, contrasted against the camaraderie and rugged determination of the veterans. Shot in rural Michigan on a shoestring budget, the atmosphere feels authentic, with woods, cabins, and makeshift battlegrounds creating the perfect backdrop for guerrilla-style warfare. What makes the film so memorable is its mix of horror and action. It isn't just a slasher, and it isn't just a war movie. It's a blood-soaked hybrid where the violence is both personal and explosive. Raimi's over-the-top performance adds a bizarre, charismatic edge that elevates the film into true cult territory. Barely noticed on release, Thou Shalt Not Kill Except found its audience in video stores and midnight screenings, where its grindhouse energy and Raimi connection made it a cult classic. Today, it remains a wild reminder of how inventive, low-budget 80s horror could be when filmmakers leaned fully into chaos. The Midnight Hour, 1985. On Halloween night, a group of teens in a small New England town break into a museum and stumble upon an ancient curse. By reading aloud from a mysterious scroll, they unleash the spirits of witches, vampires, and zombies, turning their holiday into a night of real terror. What begins as mischief quickly becomes a desperate fight for survival, as the dead return to claim the living. Directed by Jack Bender, The Midnight Hour first aired as a made-for-TV movie, but its mix of horror and camp gave it a long afterlife on home video. Lee Montgomery stars as the reluctant hero, with Sherry Belafonte and LeVar Burton among the friends drawn into the chaos. Their performances bring both charm and tension to a story that shifts between lighthearted and genuinely eerie. The film embraces the Halloween spirit, filling its small-town setting with foggy graveyards, haunted houses, and festive costumes. The undead are played both for scares and spectacle, with practical effects that deliver surprisingly effective chills for a television production. A musical number even breaks out, cementing its place as one of the most eccentric entries in 80s horror. What makes The Midnight Hour stand out is its atmosphere. It captures the feeling of Halloween night, playful, spooky, and unpredictable, while leaning into a story that's equal parts campfire tale and creature feature. Once overlooked after its original broadcast, it became a VHS favorite for fans who discovered its quirky charm. Today, it's remembered as a cult gem of Halloween horror, a film that celebrates the season with both frights and fun. Creature, also known as the Titan Find, 1985. On a remote moon of Saturn, rival space exploration teams stumble upon the ruins of an alien civilization. What they don't realize is that something still lurks there, a parasite that takes over its hosts, twisting them into violent puppets. Once it awakens, the crews find themselves trapped in a deadly struggle, not just against the alien menace, but also against each other. Directed by William Malone, Creature rides the wave of post-alien sci-fi horror with a scrappy, low-budget determination. The cast includes Lyman Ward and Diane Salinger as members of the American expedition, while Klaus Kinski delivers a brief but unforgettable turn as a volatile survivor from the rival European crew. The film's strength lies in its pulpy visuals and settings: cavernous alien ruins, metallic ship interiors, and dimly lit corridors that keep the tension tight. The monster itself, realized through slimy, practical effects, may not have had the polish of its Hollywood counterparts, but it brings enough menace to drive the carnage. What keeps Creature memorable is its mix of human conflict and extraterrestrial terror. The rivalry between the crews adds an extra layer of paranoia, making the danger feel just as much about mistrust as it is about the alien itself. While overshadowed in its time, Creature became a rental mainstay, its eye-catching artwork and promise of interstellar horror drawing in curious renters. Today it stands as a cult favorite, a gritty slice of space terror that delivers slime, suspense, and a hint of Klaus Kinski madness. And that's our look at 1985, a year where horror thrived not just in theaters, but in the wild variety of projects that found their true audience on VHS shelves and late-night broadcasts. From gothic romance to kung fu vampires, from made-for-TV spook shows to cult-driven exploitation, these films remind us how much range the genre had in the middle of the decade. They may not have been household names, but they pushed boundaries, took risks, and left behind moments that fans still remember. For even more VHS-era discoveries, visit our online store at ejectvhs.com. And remember, always be kind and rewind, because every movie is someone's favorite.